Hi. I just watched the Barbie movie. It was so good. Like, really good. Like, watching it with church, and one of the takeaways was kind of that it didn't end satisfactorily, and I agree with that. But also, with the way the movie ended, well, with what the movie did, there is no way to end that movie fully satisfactory. You see, for most people, satisfaction comes from a story will close a pot or a I'll close a point, and at the conclusion, everything will be tied up in a neat little bow. But what this movie did instead is it posed us questions. Questions it did not answer, but questions that need to be proposed for the betterment of the world nonetheless. Basically, spoilers ahead for the entire movie. The entire movie was basically about society. And it started with Barbie Land, where everything was perfect and the women were in charge and they're leading on the Supreme Court. And they were everything and they could be anything and they were doing it. And also from their point of view, they cured everything in the modern world. So that women were in charge and they were powerful and everything was brilliant and amazing. And Ken was basically nothing and basically an add-on to Barbie. Yeah, you can see where this is going really quickly, can't you? And they even showed the thing. It was like, basically, Ken was in the place of a woman in what traditional society roles were. Because that's what Barbie, and that's what they, and then things happened. And then Barbie entered the thing inside and this happened. Barbie started having impending thoughts of death. And was basically starting to feel into the world. And was going around an amazing thing. And felt actively terrified. It was kind of like that moment of entered the world and was like, I am being objectified by everyone around me instantly. And it was like, it didn't matter that she hadn't experienced that well before. She was walking in there and she knew that was what's happening and she couldn't help but feel terrified. And again, for the first time in his life, felt like he was actually getting respect and being paid attention to because it's amazing and everything was backwards. And then he learned about patriarchy and, while at the same time, Barbie was learning about the world. And in kind of some ways learning about the patriarchy, but also learning about other things and realizing that apparently Barbie hadn't made the world a better place. In fact, it made it worse. And also there was this thing where this wasn't the first time that it happened, which is just insane. Anyway, Ken finds out about patriarchy and is like, I love, and it's like, and believe, and also he finds out the patriarchy and believes it is men on horses ruling the world. No joke. Which is just the best thing ever. Anyway, he immediately tries and gets a job anywhere because he's Ken and a man, and therefore he's instantly got respect, and therefore he instantly gets a position because in some ways someone could think that that's the way the world of Barbie works. And like, it isn't quite how the way the world of Barbie works, as they do technically have memories of doing all these things, and like one's a Nobel Prize winner and they actually have memories of writing a Nobel Prize winning book and stuff. Like it's not just completely arbitrary, although it is definitely fully arbitrary. Also this whole thing by Ken and Barbie in the beginning is another thing. But anyway, Ken goes back and is like, oh, it's gonna be Ken, and basically I install the patriarchy and everyone else immediately is brainwashed and it's hilarious. And then everyone when Barbie gets back, and she also basically this whole plot line of like a doll was she was being played with and she has to track down the person and she thinks it's the daughter, it's actually the mother playing. Anyway, the mother's like, oh wait, that's actually real Barbie, let's help her and not let her get captured by Mattel who want to chuck her in a box and lock her up. I actually don't understand what Mattel's goals in this are, like, at all. They're just there. They're a representation of corporate America, but also maybe not, and it's weird, but it makes sense. Like, it's all logical within the logic science of the movie, and it comes up with a lot of gas, but it's like, it helps direct the message, but I can't sell this short. Like, go watch the movie. Everything will make much more sense if you watch the movie. Anyway, basically, main conflict, you get back to Barbie Land, and now it's Kendom. And Kens have taken over, and all the Barbies immediately think, and I was like, it's like small, and it's like, the analogy made is it's like Native Americans getting killed by smallpox, because they hadn't got it. inoculated to it. Whereas Barbie, who's been to the real world and felt anxiety and depression, is fine, isn't brainwashed. And then there's this moment where the human like basically vents about what it's like being a woman in the modern world. Like you can't be you have to be skinny, but you can't be too skinny, and you have to you can't say want to be skinny. You have to say you want to be healthy, but while still being skinny, and you have to do this and things. Like you have to acknowledge the systems out there, while also still being very grateful for the opportunity. And basically, it just outlines how fucking messed up society today is and how fucking contradictory everything is all of the time. Basically sums that up perfectly, and that speech is what gets the Barbies to like wake up from their thing and like, yes, and gets them back to normal. And basically they go around doing all that and changing all that and stopping all that. And basically immediately once they do that and they come up with this plan to make sure and rewrite Barbie Land back to being Barbie Land, they switch back to Ken. And Ken's had this whole line of being like, I want to actually read something, and then immediately runs in the back opposite direction and becoming basically an incel girl. Like he's totally incel. It's like, I don't really want to be in a relationship with you, but like a long-term commitment thing where I can definitely cheat, but you can't. And blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, oh, and all that nice guy thing, but if you break my heart, then I won't be a nice guy anymore. And all that kind of like blah, weird alpha male stuff that the internet kind of proposes at the moment. Like all that stuff. Basically, that's what the Kens represent right now. And then the Barbies weaponize this in them, and the fact that they don't actually have that much of an identity, and their only feeling of vulnerability is from the fact that if a woman is actually interested in them, otherwise they're imperfect because they have bottled insecurities that they project onto the world by trying to make themselves seem larger, even though they don't actually think. Anyway, basically, it unpacks them because basically the way the Barbies defeat the Kens is by making them jealous of each other. And then they're like, yeah. And then the next day, the Ken will fight in a war, and we will go to the voting booths and vote for the Barbie Constitution to be installed, and won't be stopped. And basically, and that's what happens. But they don't need to show that. Instead, they show the Kens fighting. And it's hilarious because they're all fighting with fucking toys. But also there's this other Ken that the main Ken have been kind of like going out. It's like, he's so much cooler than me. And it's like, no, you're not. Also, there's been a whole plotline that Barbie isn't interested in Ken. Ken's definitely interested in Barbie. But Barbie's just like, I don't want to let him down because I don't want to be mean. But yeah, I really don't like him. He's just a friend. And it's like, and part of the movie is her actually acknowledging that she is allowed to say he's just a friend. And saying that is fine, because being with someone just because you don't want to hurt your feelings isn't good for either person. And like that's actually a really helpful message of like just because that's what everyone says you're supposed to do doesn't mean it's what you're actually supposed to do. Like there are so many good things in this movie. Oh my goodness, like it was a brain load. Like it was a lot, but it was a good lot. But yeah, Ken's like. Because there's this big fight, and they're like, thing, and I'm Ken, and I'm basically where they're shouting, I'm Ken, and in the end, they're like, they all unite together, we're Ken together, and then they meet, and then they're like, wait, weren't we supposed to, and then one of them goes, wait, weren't we supposed to do the vote today, where they were going to enshrine Kendom? It's like, yeah, we must have, and then they realized, wait, we missed that, didn't we? It's like, yeah, you did. So they go back to the Barbie house, and they kind of all walking together. It's like, no, they're not walking together or like linked down. They're galloping, pretending to gallop on horses. Except when earlier in the fight, they did have some poodles of like, those toy horses they had as kids, like with the horse head and then the broomstick, basically. So the broomstick horses, but like actual horse heads. But instead, they're not doing that. They're showing the Monty Python and but it's like basically, it's like you pretend to be like. It's kind of like you're pretending to be riding a horse as a person and walking along. It's that kind of thing. As you do as a kid, like, but without broomsticks and all going along. And you get there and it's like, yes, it's Barbie Land now. And they're like, no! And there's this kind of thing. And then Ken has this dramatic breakdown where he basically starts crying and Barbie comforts him and explains things. And I should also mention that the human person made this speech. Basically, which comforted Barbie as well, because while Barbie wasn't brainwashed, Barbie became basically depressed and was like, because Barbie was stereotypical Barbie, meaning she wasn't good at anything and supposed to be good at anything. Also, that was a weird thing because it's played by Margot Robbie, meaning Margot Robbie did not look distraught or ugly whatsoever, even by conventional standards, in this scene. But the whole point was Barbie felt that way. It was like, the voice over him goes, if you wanted this to actually look like she's not statistically, stereotypically pretty at the moment, because she still fucking does, maybe you shouldn't have got Margot Robbie to play the thing. But they're also like, we're not getting Margot Robbie to not play it because she was brilliant. And, like, that's literally the only time where she didn't suit the role 100 to 10%. Like, seriously, she pretended to not know how to drink tea. Really, realistically, there was a very dissonance where it's like, she is acting. Does she actually not know how to drink tea? No, she has to know how to drink tea. Like, I guess she's Australian, but she has to know how to drink tea, right? Anyway. Yeah, so, and there's also a thing where there's almost a comment where it was like, oh, Barbie's Nigerian. It's like, and there was almost a comment of, like, being a white savior, and then she's like, nope, that was that person. Even though it's weird because Barbie's actually the one, it's Barbie's world, meaning she wouldn't be the white savior. Instead, the mum, in a way, is the white savior coming in from another thing, and her opinion is another thing, except for the fact that because she's human and the implications of this are that as humanity, we know how to deal with this shit better than things because we've grown up with it, whereas Barbies were just like, it's perfect, and we're on top of the world, and everything's fine. But anyway, basically, the end result is like that Ken's are basically like, we can be Ken, and we can just be Ken, and it's like, they can be Barbie, and it doesn't have to be Barbie and Ken anymore. It can just be Ken. Do I know if the toys will reflect this? Probably not, but within the world of Barbie, and then they make the one final joke. Well, there's multiple final jokes, but essentially say it's like, maybe one day the Kens will have as much power as women do in modern society. And it was just like, oh, right, because half of this film was about the fact that women do not have much power in modern day society, despite the fact that this was supposed to have been fixed a while ago. And while there are lots of other things and stuff, and the gender wage gap isn't actually as big as people think it is, and yada, 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 it's still going, yeah, there is still a systemic problem with some of the world our face, but basically, and then I didn't even go, yeah, so when I said Ken had a mental breakdown, it did actually show. It's like, well, I felt like I had to do all these things to be perfect and to be good. And honestly, I didn't actually like the idea of patriarchy. The moment I didn't find out I thought it was no longer fully about horses, because I do like horses a lot, because there were a lot of horses. Well, actually, no, they weren't actual horses, just pictures of horses and people pretending to ride horses. Ken was obsessed with horses, like all the Kens were obsessed with horses, which is just hilarious. But yeah, it was this kind of thing of like, I felt like it's like, and even as he's having that breakdown, he's like, I can't cry, I'm supposed to have everything around and freedom and stuff, and it's like, and it was kind of like that pat, like, honey, that's not how it works, like, and he kept trying to force the Barbie thing of like being together, and I was like, stop doing it, I don't like you. And you don't know who you are without me. Stop trying to date me. This is actively bad for both of us because you don't feel good unless you're with me. And that isn't good for us. I shouldn't be determining your self-worth. You need to go out and you can't be in like, it's not just that I don't want to be in a relationship with you. You shouldn't be in a relationship with anyone until you can be happy with yourself. And like, we're talking afterwards because of Christian, and like telling them like, just be yourself isn't like the best message, but at the same time it's like, it was less be yourself and more love yourself and actually take care of yourself, because, and that's a very Christian message, because like, as much as my whole thing is broken human, that is true, but it's also like, the thing is, you need to be able to take care of yourself and think of your self-worth if you want to enter healthy relationships, because seeking external support for your own self-worth is never going to go right unless you're seeking it from God. In which case, it'll only ever go right. But then that's God, and he's perfect. Whereas humans, it's like, you can't rely on someone to give you your self-worth, because you're going to inevitably be disappointed. Not necessarily because they're malicious, just because humans aren't perfect. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. It might make sense. Anyway, so yeah, those are a brief amalgamation of my thoughts on the Barbie movie, and it's probably not everything, and I might talk about this later date, especially if we ever watch it as a family, which I definitely want to. And basically, like, I don't think you should ever watch it by yourself, but definitely, mainly because it is so heavy, and you will want to talk about it with people afterwards, and you definitely need to have the debrief afterwards. So don't watch it by yourself. Do get a group of friends together, watch the Barbie movie. It's fantastic. Like, okay, if you grew up watching Barbie movies like me, I was kind of trepidatious going into it because like it's a big blockbuster of a movie, and it's like those Barbie movies were brilliant. And it's like they actually, in some ways, captured the heart of Barbie movies, except with the blatant misogynism against men, which I'm only just realizing existed now because it was like, yeah, Ken was done dirty, and we did Ken dirty. Like when I was playing with my toys, yeah, Ken definitely back of the bone. Hate that guy. Has definitely that not nice things were said about Ken. And that was sometimes reflected in the Barbie movies, especially the ones where Barbie was actually the Barbie, whereas it's like in like Barbie is a island princess or Barbie is Rapunzel. It's like there was a fairy tale princess, meaning Ken was actually a good guy. But the ones in real life, there were several ones where he maybe cheats and had to win Barbie back. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's just unveiling a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like a thing of the Barbie movies were all about girl power, and they were really cool on that, and they did teach good morals. But yeah, men definitely were told to fucking get in there. But yeah, what are you gonna do? Bye. Also, it's like, also I will mention this. It's like it wasn't just like sure the men were told to suck it in the sense that they weren't well written characters. All the women in the movies were well written characters. That's the best way of describing it. Even in this movie, it was a perfect annihilation of showing that in Barbie Land, everything is opposite. The men can be flat, unoriginal characters with barely any dimension, but the women are all fully flushed out characters. Basically, it's like saying this is the epic. Basically, it's like the only difference in modern media would be the roles would be switched. Like it wasn't like overly like this is a strong, powerful woman because it's a strong, powerful woman. It was like that's a well-written character. The men just weren't well-written. Does that make sense? That's a better way of putting it. It's not just like strong women just for strong women. It's like it was actually genuinely strong women, but it was the suck it to men was more in a sense like the men weren't written well, but the women were. Whereas in modern media, it's more the men are written well, but the women aren't, and it's like kind of like Barbie has always been about the opposites and trying to encourage women, and then women ended up getting look dysphoria or what I don't know, ended up hating their body image from it, and I understand and like I get it. I probably never felt that from that because let's be honest, I am stereotypically pretty. It's a fact of life. I have the hourglass figure. I am reasonably skinny. I exercise regularly. I have blonde hair, blue eyes, and I was never gonna fucking yeah. But what I will say is my favorite Barbie because of its blue dress. And then I drew on its face with marker because that was the battle lines of a warrior princess. And one of the other reasons I sucked on Ken is because Ken had a sword. Barbie didn't. So I gave the sword to Barbie instead. So yeah, just think about that for a second. Yeah. Also I say I didn't like Ken, but there was another Barbie I liked even less, and that was the Sleeping Beauty one. Purely because she wore a pink dress. You heard that right. I didn't like the color of her dress. I don't know what to think about that. Anyway, bye!